Welcome to the Beyond Atheism podcast with me, Nathan Alexander, and my co-host, Todd Tavares. Moving beyond questions of God's existence, this podcast asks what atheists should be doing next in a godless world.
Welcome. Today our guest is Thomas J. Lawson. He's a writer, eulogist, and crematory operator. He's the author of a new book, The Secret Clergy Bible. Thomas, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you're the second guest we've had from Kamloops out in British Columbia. How did you end up there?
Well, my wife has been a funeral home manager since 2006. And in 2018, she was recruited to run 3 funeral homes and a crematorium in Kamloops, British Columbia. So we all moved here. And we moved here from Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is about 2.5 hours to the west, closer to Vancouver.
Were you raised atheist? Were you raised with a faith or without?
With a faith. And I was an apostate at the age of 4.
Right.
How did that happen?
I love this story. It's my favorite story to tell. And I told it to Free Inquiry magazine a few years ago. So if you want the long version, it's in Free Inquiry magazine from 2014 or 15 or something. But my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I loved, it sounds tangential, but I loved a kid's show called Romper Room. And Romper Room is a televised version of kindergarten. And at the beginning of the show, they do the Pledge of Allegiance. And so my mom must have caught me doing the Pledge of Allegiance to the show.
Oh, right.
And she turned the TV off and said, "You can't watch that. It's forbidden in our religion. Our church says you can't watch that show." And so I, at 4 years old, my mom tells this story, so I know it's true. Because she's still a believer, but not a Jehovah's Witness. Okay. But she said, I told her that I wasn't going to go to the church anymore. And she said, "Well, you're 4, so you have to go. You have to go where I go." And I said, "Okay, I'll go, but I will either play with my toys or I will sleep. I will not listen to what they say." Wow. At 4, I don't know if she's elaborated on this story, but that apparently that's what I said. And every week, without fail, I would either play at her feet or I would sleep. And she said I was the most well-behaved toddler every week at Kingdom Hall. She says other moms were having to take their whiny, crying kids to the bathroom for a smack, and you were my little angel.
Yeah.
And I love that story because it sounds so unbelievable.
Yeah. It's really early to be sort of saying you're not gonna listen to what
to know what is wrong with your religion at the age of 4.
At the age of 4. I love that when we think about things that destroy religion, it's like science and sex and socialism. And Romper Room apparently is the real threat.
That was my reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. But my parents ended up getting divorced like a year or so later, and my mom had met a lapsed Catholic. And I don't know if we were shunned or disfellowshipped because of that. I never asked, but my stepdad introduced me to a new god, which was Santa Claus.
Right.
And boy, Santa Claus was a god that delivered, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, like, as you got older, you sort of decided you were an atheist, or
God and religion was an afterthought for the longest time. But then in high school does something strange to you. You get pretty desperate in high school. And I lived in California, and we moved around a lot from the coast to the desert, so about 50 miles away. So it was hard to maintain friendships. And my parents put our house up for sale right before my last year of high school. And so I did 3 years of one high school, and then I was going to have to start all over again. So I got desperate enough. I started to pray to Jesus for our house not to sell.
Right.
And there is no Jesus, so it sold.
Right.
Right. And we moved, and I made friends, and everything was fine. And then I remember I kept praying after, for some reason. I just kept praying, not for the house not to sell anymore, obviously, but I just thought, well, this is a good habit to have, I guess. But my life wasn't ruined, and I wasn't desperate about anything, and I was having a good time, so I stopped praying. And then I didn't really think about God or religion again for the longest time. And in the year 2000, I picked up a book by Michael Shermer called Why People Believe Weird Things, and it changed my worldview, because I was a big X-Files fan, and aliens and ghosts and Bermuda Triangle. My supernatural stuff was that, and Michael Shermer completely destroyed that for me. which was fine because after that I was a born again scientist. I was like totally into science and critical thinking and just seeing the world as it is. And
and to continue this thread a little bit more, was there anything specifically in Shermer that really spoke to you and like sort of like broke the spell?
I think it was pyramid schemes. I think he talks about pyramid schemes, and a year or two before that, I had been in a pyramid scheme. Somebody had asked me, hey, there's this group, and if you contribute $1,500, they need $3,000 from everybody. But if you and I contribute $1,500, we'll make it to the top, and we'll have like $30,000. And so I wrote a check for $1,500, and I never saw that money again. And that really upset me. I guess it was a traumatic experience, because I was that was money I couldn't easily part with. Yeah. And so when I read that in Shermer's book, it was like, gullibility is a problem.
How did he discuss it there?
I'm not sure, but he talks about so many different things. He talks about cold reading and psychics and just the way people swindle you. And it was one of the ways that people swindle you.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And pyramid schemes are pretty much just tiny churches. It might be Amway or Pampered Chef or Party Light, all these at-home businesses that you put all your money into. And if you don't, you only have so many friends to sell to, and once you're tapped out, you're doomed.
Yeah, right.
But if like, I wouldn't be talking to you guys if I hadn't read that book, because that book led to websites and blogs, and it was P.Z. Myers. Do you know P.Z. Myers? Pharyngula?
Yeah.
It was on his blog that I found out about Charlie Moore and the Bluegrass Blade.
Okay, right. So that's, maybe just explain what that is.
Well, Charlie Moore was an atheist prohibitionist in Kentucky, and he created an atheist newspaper in 1884 in Kentucky, and he railed against everything that Kentucky is known for. So religion, gambling because of the Kentucky Derby, and whiskey or bourbon, right?
Yeah.
And so he ended up being the most, I think it was Kentucky's most hated man. He made a lot of people mad, because he even made atheists mad because of his prohibition slant. Yeah. He's like, well, don't take away the only thing we have.
Yes, exactly.
So from P.Z. Myers's, I found out about Charlie Moore and the Bluegrass Blade, and found out that all the issues of the Blade were on the Library of Congress's website. I should say that I wasn't working at the time. I was a stay-at-home dad, so I was taking care of my kids full time, and they were having a lot of naps. They didn't need a lot of attention back then, so I was able to spend countless hours on these newspaper articles. And I came across one page that had "Why I Am an Atheist" in really big letters. And I was like, that's weird. So I started reading, and it was from the readers of the newspaper. And it was incredible. They were saying very progressive, modern things. And I read every letter, and then I thought, I think these need to be shared. How do I do that? Do I start a blog? I've always wanted to be a writer since when I was 8. And I didn't think it was nonfiction I'd end up writing. From picking up Shermer's book, 11 years later, I was a new atheist author, writing about atheism. Yeah. Well, that book is called Letters from an Atheist Nation.
Mm-hmm. So you've just come out with a new book called The Secret Clergy Bible. Just maybe tell us about how that project came
A
about.
little backstory. I was researching for the letters book and came across, I was reading every book I could find about atheism in the 19th century. And one of those books was Views of Religion, which was a 700-page book. Although I read it online, so I didn't have to pick it up or anything.
Right, yeah. Yes.
But I hear Mark Twain had a copy of Views of Religion in his library, which sounds kind of cool. But I was reading all these quotes, and it's a lot of quotes, so I was skimming most of it. But I was noticing that a lot of the quotes were coming from ministers, and I was agreeing with what they said because they were trashing religion, even though they were working clergy. They were saying things like maybe religion isn't all it's cracked up to be. The churches are emptying. Where's everybody going? There's nobody to replace me when I'm gone. Nobody wants to be a minister anymore. And so I should say, Views of Religion was published by Rufus K. Noyes in 1906, I believe. And there's so many quotes. There's thousands and thousands of quotes. So I went through, it's all digitized, right? So it's all text. And I highlighted the entire book, downloaded it into an Excel file, and then I pretty much cut out everything that wasn't a clergy member. And it ended up being 1,200 quotes, I think. And so I thought, okay, so now I have these quotes. What am I going to do with them? I was like, well, I did the letters book, which was the average American at the time, farmers and housewives and doctors and dentists, just average people, trashing religion. And so I had these clergy, and I was like, okay, so I've done the letters book from the average American. I should do another book with the clergy. And so that I pushed that off to the side because I was busy with the letters book. But like I was saying before, that I was going to conventions to sell the letters book, and at one convention I met Jerry DeWitt, and Jerry DeWitt was a Louisiana Pentecostal minister, and he was in the Clergy Project, and he was the first graduate. So he was the first person to come out as an atheist from the Clergy Project. He had come out at the American Atheist Convention just a few days before I met him. So he was still spinning.
Right.
But he talked about the Clergy Project, and I was like, what is this Clergy Project? And it is a secure website forum for clergy who don't have supernatural beliefs anymore. They've abandoned their faith. They don't believe anything that they say anymore, but they're still working, and they feel stuck, and they don't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. And so the Clergy Project helps them make the transition from believer to non-believer, and then eventually get out of the hell that they're in, which is lying or pretty much being a hypocrite in front of people every week.
So before we get into that, because that's something we definitely need to talk about, maybe build more on the Secret Clergy Bible, what that reveals about what clergy members, at least at the time, were saying. Were these things that they were saying behind closed doors? Do you know where
okay.
the
These quotes were taken pretty much from church journals, so kind of like trades journals, kind of like the Clergy Project, where it's an area for everybody to speak freely. And a lot of these quotes came from those journals, and it was like, we profess to believe things that we don't believe anymore, but are we telling our people the truth?
Yeah.
So it was kind of a therapeutic back and forth through these trades journals. And so there was a lot of truth that their congregants weren't getting every week.
So this is how, in a lot of ways, these quotes were things that the religious elites or pastors were saying to each other.
Yes.
This is a part of a conversation, a professional conversation among the religious.
Exactly.
What are the sort of themes that you found throughout the work? Because I noticed like a big one is that they seem to, already by 1906, seem to say, okay, there's not really anything we can do about science and evolution. That's basically right. The Bible is basically wrong.
And you were finding clergy who were saying we can use evolution. Like evolution is the how, and we're all about the why. So if you want to be relevant, talk about the why and ignore the how. Say that the how is out there and Darwin was right, but explain the why. And if you stay on topic, you'll stay alive. But a lot of them just fought against it. They were like, just like they are with gay rights or trans rights now. If they put their they put their foot down and say no, we're not going to accept this, they're going the way of the dodo.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, like there were a lot of, like in your book, like it shows, like there were a lot of clergy who were accepting of things like evolution, and also just in general that the story in Genesis, for example, isn't a literal story of creation, and it's like
Right.
allegorical or something like that.
Yeah, you have to make up your mind. Is this going to be allegorical or is this going to be literal? And
Yeah,
there's still people who take it literally to
yeah,
this day.
absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, even in the 19th century, there were people who were, and before that too, of course, like who were rejecting a literalist reading of the Bible and so on. Maybe this is sort of a theme, perhaps, like throughout religion, that there's some kind of gulf between like the what the clergy is saying and what the kind of average believer actually believes.
It's funny that you say gulf because I think of tides, and how it's the tide comes in, the tide goes out, and it takes the sand away. It kind of erodes religion,
That's yeah.
but just bit by bit, pieces by pieces. But I think the clergy they were reading the same things. They were reading Carlyle. They were reading Darwin. They were reading Spencer. They were all this knowledge was coming. Like the light bulb was invented, so people could read at the library longer. It was just
Yeah.
all these different things were happening, right? And the knowledge it's just like the internet. It had some good and it had some bad. We've seen the bad recently, but back in 2006, we got an uptick in non-believers.
It's also interesting to see that quite frequently in the Secret Clergy Bible, they just admit, well, okay, there's not really an ethical position that you can build from the Bible, or the morality of the Bible is kind of outdated. How do you know how they moved on from this, or how this differed from their sort of audience-facing message?
Well, I think it was a lot like it is now. If people start to leave, you change your story. You do anything you can. That's if you look in the Secret Clergy Bible. There's the heading Ezekiel. Ezekiel is just lie. Just do whatever you can to get people to God. There is no holds barred. At one point in Ezekiel, God says, "Bake that bread with human feces, so that you get people's attention. Do whatever you can." So
Right.
in the Secret Clergy Bible, Ezekiel is all about just do whatever you can. Change the story, change your ethics, change your morals, allow this, allow that, don't allow this, don't allow that. Whatever you can do to keep the people in the seats, which is kind of like Fox News. Keep the viewers watching, tell them what they want to hear, and if that doesn't work, change the story, like the vaccines. Don't take a vaccine. Oh, the stock market crashed. Take a vaccine. Same deal.
Do you have a favorite set of these quotes
Books
from the book?
I like the ones about hell because hell is a great stepping stone, and the ones about hell are all in Revelation, because Revelation ends the Bible, and it ends my Bible, and so all the quotes about hell are great. It's pretty much once you've gotten rid of the belief in hell, you're safe, and you're probably going to end up a non-believer, or at least spiritual but not religious.
One of the sections that was interesting to me was, I think it's somewhere near the start, which is about the clergy sort of complaining and talking about all the people who are leaving the churches and how like the churches are becoming empty and then everyone's at home on Sunday and so on.
Right.
And it's just interesting to me because like they're the same complaints today, and I sort of wonder, like they're having these same issues in the 19th century or like early 20th century. But I wonder, like, is this because maybe the people in the past were not as religious as we think now, or maybe the clergy were sort of exaggerating the extent of the problem.
I think it
Like,
was just the
yeah.
freedom, like the 1850s, like the gold rush and the land grab. right, in Oklahoma, and just people getting freedom and out in the middle of nowhere with no church. All they had were each other, was their families. And if you don't have church beat into you day after or week after week, you'll lose interest. And so that's what I think. I think these people were just on their own. They were just community minded, but not church minded. And you started seeing these, they were called camp meetings. And it was ministers would go on tour pretty much, and they'd pop a tent and they'd invite people in a tiny town, and they'd try to convert them. They tried to scare the bejesus out of them and get them to become Christians or whatever their faith was. I mean, it was mostly Christianity, but whatever their denomination was. And so you had all these camp meetings. But it's funny, at the same time as these camp meetings were happening, Robert Ingersoll was also touring, and he was drawing much larger crowds.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. So how did you connect with the Clergy Project?
I haven't. I'm just a big fan of the Clergy Project. I have no affiliation. They don't know about this book at all. Yeah, I did try to reach out to somebody who was, I think, the executive director at the time, but then I'm pretty sure they got rid of their executive director's position, and now it's just run by a board. So that didn't pan out, but that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and the book wasn't really done. I just kind of told her, as I'm working on this book, do you guys want to be involved at all? And I never received a response. So this book has been in the works off and on for since 2012, since I thought about it when I met Jerry DeWitt. And it was 1,200 quotes, so it really had to be compiled. Well, I got real busy. The kids started to get older and they needed my attention more, so I wasn't able to ignore them as much as I did before. So yeah, I've been working on this book for 9. I published it last year, so I was working on it for 8 years.
Right.
Wow.
Just off and on, just piece by piece, not full time. So,
yeah.
But the pandemic happened, and I was like, well, I should be. Everybody else is being, prolific, so maybe I should come out with something too. Hey, I got that old Secret Clergy Bible, so I went.
Everybody came out of it productive.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, I did something.
Yeah.
Although I never stopped working. Death doesn't stop, so
no. Yeah. Right.
I never had an extra day off or anything. I was what they call an essential worker. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, especially in the time of a plague, I can imagine.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I haven't done too many COVID cases here at the crematorium. I mean, probably a lot for the population that we have, but not a lot. Maybe 10.
Yeah. So when did you start with the work as a crematorier? I don't even know what the word is.
Cremationist. That's what my magazine says that I get. That gets to live. I get the North American Cremationist, I think it's called.
Right.
Oh my God. Must
and
be great.
yeah, my wife was recruited to run the funeral homes in the Kamloops area, in the interior, and also the crematorium. And the cremationist that was here was retiring, so it all just worked out great. The kids were not needing me anymore. They were getting bored with me. So I had a lot more free time. I was volunteering more, at the school library and things like that. So I had the time. And then this position came open, and I was like, okay, I'll be a cremationist. Right. And I've been with the company for since 2007, but I was doing the DVD slideshows for the funerals, where they do the picture slideshow with music and things during the funeral. So I was putting those together. So I was kind of involved in the funeral industry, but then this position came open, and all of a sudden I was a cremationist, and I've been doing that for 2 years now.
So what is it like to be a cremationist?
Well, you feel of service. You feel like you're doing. You feel that you're needed. I mean, I'm essential, like I said. Yeah, I'm an essential worker, yes. So I feel needed. There's a lot of that feeling, fulfillment. But there's also, I mean, working in the death care industry is hard. You have to be able to keep some distance between the families and you. because I mean, the funeral industry attracts empaths and people who are caring, but if you are overly caring or overly empathic, your mental health is going to suffer. So you
Yeah,
have to be
right.
the type of person who can leave things at work. You have to be able to get close enough to a family, but not too close that you take on 100% of their suffering, because
Right.
you
Right.
you have to be a professional. You have to do things for them.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't be one of them. You can't be grieving
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, but it does get hard, like especially when people come through my building and they're my parents' age, or one of my siblings' ages or something. Just reminds me of mortality and the circle of life and things like that. So it has its ups and it has its downs.
Yeah. Had there been any sort of emotional training for that beforehand?
There isn't, but I mean it's offered, so you can take it. But I didn't take any. But well, I should backtrack a little bit. In 2015, I became a eulogist, and that was through the company. They recruited me and said I'd be a good fit for being a celebrant, a funeral celebrant. And so I took the training, and I took drama in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought, hey, I could do this because I took drama. And
Yeah.
so when it got to the time in class where you're speaking in front of other people,
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at
Mm.
all. But they had professional people teach us public speaking. And the mousiest person, including me, or I was more cotton-mouthed, but there were people who were so shy. But I wasn't shy. I was extroverted. But after that training, I could talk in front of thousands of people, and I have. Like there was, I've spoken to in front of a lot of people, and I'm so comfortable now. But I took that training, and what I do is I meet with the family, and they tell me their person's story. Like they tell me dad's story, where he grew up, their favorite trips, things like that. So I'm pretty much a conduit for them, because a lot of family members, they want to have a funeral, but they don't want public speaking, right? Public speaking is the number one fear.
Yeah.
Death is number
Right.
two.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm there to catch these people, right? They're like, we want
Mm,
to tell dad's story, but none of us want to talk in front of
I
anybody.
see.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
And so I do the talking, and the feedback that I get is so rewarding. People are, number one, blown away because the bar is so low, because people have been to funerals before and all they got was a lecture about
Yeah. Right.
religion,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Yes.
they had to listen to Bible verses over and over again and nothing was about the person. So when people come to my funerals and hear about the person, they are just blown away. And I get, and a lot of old ladies will come up to me and they'll go, whose nephew are you, or how are
Right.
you related to Bob? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't
Right.
know Bob at all. I
Right.
said, I'm just the guy that talks.
Mm. So that position, it doesn't carry, like, it's completely divorced from any religion.
Yeah, it's a strange, I kind of feel like a member of the Clergy Project. I come to these people's houses, and it's not that the person didn't go to church, although that's most often the case. They didn't go to church, so they don't have, like, the family doesn't have a
Right.
church. They
Yeah.
don't
Right.
have
Okay.
their own personal pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So first they'll ask, "Are you a pastor?" And I say, "No, I'm a secular humanist." and,
Right.
Mhm.
and then we get past that, and then
Yes.
and then they tell me what they want, and I'll do whatever they want. The only thing I won't do hypocritical things. So it's like I'm in the Clergy Project. I don't want to do hypocritical things, so I will not call people to pray. I won't lead prayer. I don't do the Lord's Prayer. I don't do any of that. I always get somebody else. If they want that as a part of the ceremony, I get somebody else to do it. Like for me, it's just, and my funerals are biographies, so it's like I'm doing a documentary about this person, but there's no pictures. It's
Yeah.
just me
Mm.
talking.
Mhm.
Mm.
Although there are pictures halfway through when we do a slideshow, so it's kind of like a documentary. But yeah, that's what my funerals are. They're biographies.
One thing I wanted to ask that just sort of thought of now, like, how do you handle it? Say, like, if someone's relative says, like, well, like, says to you, like, well, they're in a better place now, or something like that. Like, I mean, I guess you
don't-
just sort of nod along, or
I don't argue with people.
you don't say like,
well, now that you
heaven is
mention
a
it.
lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I maintain I'm very diplomatic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could work for the UN, I tell you.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
After a funeral.
But it takes on, it sounds like it is perhaps even more. I mean, you make it sound like it's very personal. You connect with the family. You're talking about that individual's life. You're talking about their place in the world. It sounds like it has I don't want to read too much into it, but almost like it does have this spiritual connection, right? You're connecting them to the larger community, but without any need for any of the religious mumbo jumbo in there.
Right. And you know what? I rely so much on the bluegrass blade because there are so many people. I mean, it was the 19th century. People were dying like crazy because nothing could be cured, right?
Yeah.
So there are
Right.
so many funerals for atheists. And the biggest challenge they had was not being buried as a stranger or a straw man. They needed to be buried as an atheist. They lived as an atheist, they died as an atheist, and they wanted everybody to know. So there were a lot of obituaries. So people would like submit obituaries like crazy in the newspapers just to let everybody know that Bob was an atheist and he was not like he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Right.
And what I found out is there's this website called findagrave.org, and so you can find a person in my Letters from an Atheist book, look them up on Find a Grave, and you can go to their grave and you can see their headstone, and you can see that it's simple. It's just their name and dates. There's no cherubs, there's no hands praying, there's no crosses. It's just a simple headstone. Some of them have great quotes on them, but it's reassuring to know that they were treated fairly when they died. Their family buried them and respected the way that they lived.
Yeah. It was such an issue in the 19th century of people wanting to claim, so and so
Somebody converted on the
on their
deathbed.
deathbed. Yeah. And I think, I'm not sure who it was, but like they really, some famous atheists like really went out of their way to make sure that there was sort of respectable people there at the deathbed to
Right.
ensure
That's
that
fun.
no one fabricated a story of like a deathbed conversion. Yeah.
So it's great that there is that historical connection though over now. I mean, it almost over 100 years.
Yeah.
Is that how
Yeah,
far back the blade went?
the blade stopped printing in 1910.
Mm.
So it's
So
been
definitely over
110
100
years.
years.
Yeah.
Do you draw from like?
Well, what I draw from it is the natural stuff. Like they're all naturalists, right? So they equate nature with like there's this one author, Walter Hurt. Like Walter Hurt, I don't know what he did for a living, but his writing is beautiful and it's in the blade, and he's talking about someone who's died, and he's talking about, I think he was writing about some young girl who had died. And so he's saying how death in old age is right, but death in young age is wrong. Just like in the fall, we know that the leaves are going to die. We know they're going to fall. We know winter's coming. So when something like death happens at the wrong time, which when you're young, that's springtime, that's summertime, and that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I mean, just those ideas floating around my head. And I've never had to do a funeral for anybody very young. Most of my funerals are for older people, but I did. It's funny I say that because the first eulogy I ever did was for a friend of mine whose baby had died at 2 or 3 months. And this was in 2012. So I was in the thick of writing my book and reading these things in the blade. And I immediately found Walter Hurt in one of the pages. And what he said helped me write that eulogy. And the mother loved every word of it because it was so consoling. Just the way he explained things and how, like, why do we feel the way we do? It's because we were going to watch this flower bloom and it became a bud and we were seeing it open, and then it was just chopped down. So we're just left with this feeling of loss that we had so many expectations. and then they were gone. So it's just the way he explains it. It's like, yeah, that's the way I feel. And I feel that way about a flower, and I feel that way about my child. Yeah.
I mean, do you think, like, working at the crematorium and being a funeral celebrant, I mean, like, I guess this makes you obviously think a lot about death.
Yes.
And does it, I mean, what impact has that had on your atheism, if any, or non-belief, or whatever?
Well, being in the funeral industry, I'm around a lot of religious people. So I used to be a firebrand militant atheist. And, back in the day, back in the Dawkins days, I mean, everybody was doing it. Everybody was railing against religion.
Yeah.
Like it was the 19th century again.
Right. Yes.
And then, I think well, most of us who lived through that time have kind of lightened up a bit.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
And the funeral industry has helped me lighten up a bit, because I understand believers now, and humanity, and so yeah, the funeral industry has helped me maybe not disregard my atheism, but get beyond atheism.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, nice.
I get that.
Yeah.
So is there, when you write the eulogies, I mean, this is where my mind went, like following the structure and what they do, like the patterns or the things the themes and what you want to touch on. Do you follow a secular humanist sort of outline? Is there a structure in place, or is this something that you inherited or you've developed completely independently?
Well, I got during the training, they train you how to structure a good funeral. So there's elements that you can include, like music to start with, music to end with, but just getting the overall story and finding out who exactly this person is and how to help people just realize what they've lost. And the biggest thing in my funerals is, it's not just the family who's lost. It's not just the people in this room who've lost. This person lived their life. I mean, chances are, if they weren't a hermit, they left the house occasionally, and they would talk to cashiers, they would talk to baristas, they would talk to other humans and interact with them, bring smiles to people's faces. And that kind of stuff is contagious, and it spreads. And so their tiny part in this world is to create this. It's kind of like chaos theory, where the butterfly flaps its wings in Peking, and then you get rain in Central Park, right? We heard from Jurassic Park, the quote from Jurassic Park. Yeah. So chaos theory, the tiniest thing can change the world, just in a way, how you make people feel on the street. So I try to just show them how the world has lost, not just the family, not just the friends. The world has lost something, and we need to stop, and we need to pay attention and realize that we need to, if this person was extra in their volunteer work, we need to do a little bit more volunteering, or we need to do this or that, make people smile, be more accepting of bad drivers, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's easy to avoid religion. Religion is out of its lane, right? Just ponder things. Don't rely on the old crutch, right? Just there's plenty of Bible stories to try to interpret something that happened to you that day, and you can find a Bible. Of course, these things have been happening to us for eons, and 2,000 years ago, someone wrote about it. So of course, yes, you can find, you can equate it with some old story, but just think about it differently,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting the way you describe the eulogies is that, like, they sound so much more natural than the religious telling would be, the religious eulogy would be.
Right.
The religious eulogy would be like shoehorning in stuff that's completely irrelevant to someone's life. You're adding all this extra stuff that doesn't really connect to people, whereas what it sounds like what you've been doing is making it universalizing it, right? Making it about who we are, what we are, and how we connect to one another.
Yeah. And as I was saying before, the feedback that I get, people are smiling after a funeral, or
right.
or they're just satisfied with what they just heard, And if you think about that, how happy they are or how satisfied they are after my funeral, they are the exact opposite after going to a religious funeral. And so every 200 people leave that church with a bad taste in their mouth. They're like, oh, I don't want that for my funeral. Please, someone talk about me, not Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
Or just sad.
It's like, did this person exist at all?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, not Jesus, this person. Like, did Bob exist? Because we didn't talk about him.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. I went to a wedding like that where the minister just talked about obedience for like half an hour. It was bizarre. It's like, this is the opposite of what I want as a marriage.
Who was supposed to be obedient?
Right.
I'm sure it wasn't the husband.
Right.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was everybody. Might have been a problem later in the relationship. Who am I obeying and why?
Yeah.
But do you get to share these ideas with other eulogists? Is there a network of secular eulogists?
There isn't. Well, I'm not a secular celebrant. I'm just a celebrant. Like, I'm not for, like, people don't know me as a secular celebrant. They just know me as a celebrant. So I do everything. Like, if somebody wants, like, I've done so many funerals with Psalm 23 because it's what people fall back on. But, Psalm 23 is all right. It's the walking through the valley of the shadow of death verse that people concentrate on. So it's kind of a speed bump right in the middle of my funeral. But if they want, I do what they want. So if they want, if they say, well, we should probably have something from the Bible, I'll immediately go to Ecclesiastes, because Ecclesiastes is the most atheistic Bible book, because it's all about eat, drink, be merry. When you die like a dog. You're never coming back. So that's my favorite book, and so I'll include something in Ecclesiastes, and I think that's where you find the what's the one that they put into a song from the 60s. It's like turn.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
Everything. Yep. There's this, there's that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe we can move on to our round of our game that we've come up with. Can a true atheist?
Okay.
Something. So the way it works is we'll ask the question like, can a true atheist say, "Oh my God," for example, and you have to tell us whether you think a true atheist can do these things. All right. So, okay, the first one. Can a true atheist swear on a Bible?
Well, they can if they want, but I don't think they need.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we mean a true atheist in the sense that you would take away their atheist card if they did this.
Yeah,
or
right.
You would.
Well, if I saw some atheist swearing on a Bible.
Yeah. Well, you would. Would you be like, I don't know about that?
I'd have to have a discussion. It's kind of like an AA member if you saw somebody taking a drink.
All right.
You'd have the same reaction.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So you sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah. And then they're like, it's a Shirley Temple. And you're like, maybe. So like this, okay, can a true atheist say bless you if someone sneezes?
I say bless you every time somebody sneezes near me. I don't know if it's out of habit. Oh, so I'm an atheist, and I say bless you, so yes.
Okay, yes, it's like a logical proof or something.
A short answer. I don't need to explain myself to you. I think, Gesundheit just sounds like it's a mouthful. All German words are a mouthful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. Can a true atheist believe in ghosts?
Ooh. It's just got thinking
about that.
Stumps you.
Well, if they haven't read Shermer's book yet, then yeah. Like if they read the one about God, but they didn't read the one about ghosts, then then maybe the spell hasn't been broken yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
why? What's wrong with believing in ghosts?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But if you're an atheist, chances are you're a critical thinker. So if you think about it long enough, I guess, well, these voice recordings that they get from ghosts, there could be a scientific explanation for that. So you can believe that a voice was recorded, but taking it the next step further is just, I guess, just conjecture.
Okay, how about this? Can a true atheist eat Cadbury Easter eggs, chocolate bunnies, or basically, can atheists enjoy Easter?
Yes. Well, I'll give you the standard atheist answer. Yes, because it's not about Jesus. It's
Right.
about the goddess Easter.
Yeah, right.
It's about springtime, and you've suffered. Depending on where you live, you suffered a very hard winter, so you got to celebrate when the
so
flowers
as a
start.
parent, have you secularized or naturalized all of the holidays, or at least like the big holidays?
Oh yeah. We've hidden eggs for the kids. We told the kids about Santa Claus because you don't want your kid to be the kid in class who ruins everybody's fun. Like, that is not how you want to start your kid's childhood.
Yeah,
that's making a kid. They say indoctrination is child abuse, but telling your kid there's no Santa Claus so that they can share that news with all the other kids and completely ruin the rest of the school. Yeah, that's child abuse as well.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Tell your kids about Santa Claus. It also teaches them critical thinking skills because they'll eventually wonder how Santa can do everything in one night. It just leads, like, where'd the carrots really go? Maybe they can find. I think 1 year, the tooth fairy. I ruined the tooth fairy.
Oh, right.
For my daughter, I think.
Oh no.
She showed up with her tooth the next morning. And we had forgotten. So yeah, but I said, put it back under.
Yeah.
And maybe she'll show up tonight. And of course she did.
Right. Yes.
I set a reminder in my phone.
Yeah.
But you know what? I tied. I can't remember what I was tying, but I tied it with some pink string. And I tried to make it all fairy-ish, and she showed up the next morning, and she saw this. She said something about the string, like, "Are you the tooth fairy? Because I saw this string sitting over there yesterday, and now it's here." So I had to come clean. I said, "Yes." I said, "I'm the tooth fairy."
All right.
I said, "You caught me." And see that right there. You go. She saw evidence. She used her critical thinking skills, and she came back, and the spell was broken.
Right.
So now my kids don't believe anything I say.
Yeah,
which is great. I love the no respect for authority unless it's earned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. That's what you get for being honest.
Yeah.
And not lying and say, no, the tooth fairy is the tooth fairy.
Yeah, and just keep that lie going until it ruins their adulthood.
Yeah. Just adopt like more and more extreme measures to keep this going.
Right. Until they're in college, and then they mention the tooth fairy, and everybody looks at them like they're crazy.
Yeah. All right. Can a true atheist visit a psychic?
See, these are hard questions because atheism is like, Buddhists are atheists, and there's a lot of people who are spiritual but not religious. So they don't believe in God. So, I mean, if we're defining an atheist as someone who doesn't believe in God, then that's all that it means. So there's plenty of atheists out there who still believe weird stuff. I mean, there's so many Republican atheists. So
yeah, right.
There you go.
Yeah.
They believe wacky things.
All right. Well,
so is the answer?
That's a way to get pedantic around that one.
Yeah.
Don't be ridiculous. A psychic. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
we have one here about.
It's not very far from psychic and horoscopes, and I know there's plenty of atheists who believe in horoscopes, or the universe, or things like that. Yeah. Like God has nothing to do with it. They just replaced God with the universe.
Oh yeah, things like that.
Or the secret, or whatever it is, a power of positive thinking or attraction. Well,
the thing is with psychics and horoscopes, you have testable claims, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is the possibility of if there's a claim made, there's a possible outcome. It's just determining what caused it. So I think there is something different going on there. Can a true atheist wear a crucifix as part of their jewelry?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Simple.
And they don't have to wear it upside down or sideways.
Ooh,
It could, I mean, why would they? But yeah.
Yeah.
If it's gold and they cherish gold, then yeah, of course.
Yeah. Can a true atheist date someone who is religious?
Yes, because like I said before, it's not what you believe, it's what you do, like how you act, how you're a person, how you person.
Can a true atheist believe the moon landing was fake?
I'm sure many do. All it takes is one YouTube video.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like I don't believe in God, but I don't believe in the moon landing either. It's an avalanche there.
But Tom, why did they build the rocket? That's the expensive part. That's the tough thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of wasted money, I guess.
Yeah.
For what?
What is it? Where did it go? That's what I don't understand.
It's one of these weird things where people have a thought, like the Chinese released this virus on purpose so that they would kill all the people who buy their plastic junk.
Right. Yeah.
So you just got to go to step 2, and then you're like, okay, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah. That doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Nathan, is there anything else you'd like to ask?
No.
I feel we've learned a lot.
Yes.
Did I ace the test? Are there right answers?
Yeah.
They're whatever you say they are, Tom. That's the great thing about this.
Yeah. That's what you get with being reasonable.
Is that
it's not wishy-washy. It's not wishy-washy. It's being reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And open-minded.
Except to ghosts, apparently.
Right.
Some other time we'll have to figure out.
There's another explanation for that. Yeah.
All right. Well, this was fantastic. I learned a lot. We've got the tell us, how can people purchase the Secret Clergy Bible?
It's only available on Amazon because I don't publish through real publishers. I self-publish. Well, these past 2 books have been self-published, so it's available on Amazon, and it's only a print book. Like it didn't work as an ebook, so you can only get it, and it's $8.99 on the U.S. Amazon, and I think $11 because of the exchange in the Canadian one. And it's available, wherever you are, because wherever Amazon is, that's where it's available.
And there'll definitely be a link on the page below.
Yes. Yeah.
Tom, anything else you'd like to plug?
I'd like to plug the Facebook group, Grief Beyond Belief. I don't know if you know about that, but it's just where secular people can go to get. It's kind of like the Clergy Project. It's a place, an online forum where you can, grieve with others who don't believe.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. We should just say one more time that all the proceeds for the book go to the Clergy Project.
Right. Yes, I am in a position where I am not rich enough, but I don't need any money from this book. So everything that is made on this book is going straight to the Clergy Project. And people probably wonder, well, why don't you just cut them a check? And I was like, well, if I sell enough books, it'll be more than I could afford.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it was so easy to do. So I don't expect to be paid for something like that. It's my charitable contribution to the Clergy Project. So I hope it sells well.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me again. It was great to talk to you guys.
Oh my God, that was Tom. That was amazing. Nathan,
Yes.
what are your takeaways? What did you learn? What blew your mind?
I was really interested in when he was talking about being a eulogist, just because it is something that everyone has to face death, obviously, and I think maybe secular people are a bit less. They don't have sort of a script, I suppose, to deal with death. So I think that was really fascinating, and just the way he had drawn on historical writing about that too was really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. To go back over 100 years and to find there, like the thread, like that's the flame that you're going to carry into the future. That's amazing, right? That you can find that piece back there. That was pretty awesome. And the way it all just kind of happened, I think that was amazing. Like, there was never a time when he was discussing anything where I thought, wow, it sounds like you would really need religious training to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
None of this requires religious training. None of it. It's just, you got to be open, talk to people, think about it, be respectful. and recognize the connections to the world and the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Really powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely, like you said, like it's a more personal thing, like the sort of eulogies that he would do versus maybe like a priest or someone, which is more about religion than about like the person who's actually died. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
really,
Yeah.
really, yeah, really interesting stuff.
Right. Why would
Um,
you add that garbage to it? You don't need any of that stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Really neat. I mean, and overall, like just as thinking about the interview, we were prepared to talk about something completely different, and I'm really glad like that's what we talked about. That was amazing.
mhm.
Right down
Yeah,
the
yeah.
most touching and meaningful.
Yeah, so we should say just a little more about plugging his book. So yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's really interesting to get mostly the views of various clergy in the 19th century, and there's some that are before that too, but mostly in the 19th century. Getting their views, it's pretty interesting. I think, like I said in the interview, that I was really interested in the ones who are complaining about how people are leaving the churches and how there's no one who wants to be a minister anymore and so on. So yeah, it was really, yeah, pretty neat.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it goes all the way back. I think he's got like Augustine um,
Yeah, yeah. Some of
and
the like the
Pius is in there.
yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah,
saw
and
Martin
like
Luther
old
was a couple
British
times.
monks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm.
it goes pretty far back.
Hmm.
And of course, the that everything is donated to the Clergy Project, which is pretty outstanding project to people who basically, if they come out as atheists, they lose their livelihood, they lose everything. They're really dependent on. I think that's what most of them. Do you have any connections to the Clergy Project? Do you know much about it?
I don't know much about it really, aside from yeah, just like what you're saying.
Well, we'll add a link to that below if you want to donate separately or through the book. We'll make that easy for you. It's clergyproject.org. There'll be a link in the description below. Speaking of links and plugs, you got anything out there we need to do?
Yes, people should like and subscribe, rate and review, and other verbs, I
Yes.
guess.
Smash those buttons and
Yes.
pull those strings and ring those bells, all that
Hmm.
stuff. The
Yes. Yeah.
butterflies, I think you do something with them, tickle the butterflies, perhaps.
I think so. I think that's the
Who
phrase. Yeah.
knows? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all very mysterious technology.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, if there are any problems, something offended you, and you're looking for someone to cancel, you can do that. Nathan G. Alexander on the Twitter.
Yes. Twitter. Yeah. That's true. That's yeah. I remember now why I'm getting so many angry messages.
Yep, I know what's happening, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to change my ways. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it for now. This has
Hmm.
been a great talk. Great to be back, and we'll
Yes.
see everybody soon.